So, Anonymous has asked, recently I started hearing that the king of the south in Daniel is Islam. What is your opinion?
Sorry,
All
that
right.
is a great question. I actually have heard all sorts of things. I've heard the king of the north is Islam. I've heard the king of, the south is all sorts of things. Let's go to the Bible for the answer to that, and let's look at the book of Daniel, chapter 11, and we'll look at verses 1 through 8 really quick, and I think we'll see our answer pretty clearly. If you go to Daniel chapter 11, um, starting in verse 1, it's basically where the angel is beginning this prophecy. And this is the longest prophecy in the entire Bible. So it's pretty intense. But as far as Daniel chapter 11, verse 1, it starts out, it says, also in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and strengthen him. So this is the angel who's speaking to Daniel about where they are in this prophecy, basically, where it's starting at. And so it's basically starting in the time of the Medes and the Persians in this empire. So if you keep going now, so we'll go pretty quickly through to verse 8. And it says, now I'll show you the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be richer than them all, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up against the realms of Grecia. So basically, there's going to be some other kings in Medo-Persia, and they were going to battle with Greece eventually. And then in verse 3, it's just going through this prophecy. A mighty king shall stand up and shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. We know that there was a great king that started out, the king of Greece, which was Alexander the Great. And it says, speaking of this great Greek king, it says, and when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided towards the 4 winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. So basically, once after the Medo-Persian Empire was done, the Greek Empire starting with Alexander the Great. And it says, when he shall stand up, so basically in the peak of his kingdom, his whole kingdom is going to be broken, which is exactly what happened. And so we see that if you keep going through the verses, verse 5, it says, and the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So basically, after Alexander the Great was he died at the age of like 32. We're not sure if it's alcohol poisoning or a fever, but basically he died very young. And then instead of his, this is not to his posterity, right? It said that it'll be divided into the 4 winds. So basically he said it shall go to the strongest. So he didn't have any heir to the throne. So it went to his 4 generals. And they basically took Greece, the Greek kingdom, in the north, south, east, and west. And it says in the south, basically this person was very strong. And that's really true because the southern portion of the Greek Empire had Egypt. And when you look at Egypt, all sorts of cities are named after Alexander the Great, like Alexandria. Alexander conquered all over Northern Africa, and he conquered so much so that Egypt was very much under Greek control. So this king of the south is, in fact, Egypt. And you'll see that as you keep going through these verses. If you keep going in through verses 6 through 8. And so it's basically talking about stuff that had gone on between the king of the south and the other 3 generals that controlled the rest of the Greek Empire. It says, at the end of his years, he shall join themselves together, and the king's daughter shall of the south. So basically, the daughter of the king, the Egyptian king, which is the line of the Ptolemies. That was the famous royal lineage of Egypt, basically, in that time. And it's very clear. If you look in history, this is exactly what happened in verses 6 through 8. It says, and the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. So basically, they were like, maybe if we marry, we'll have peace, because there was nothing but war between these 4 generals. It says, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. So basically, this is exactly what happened in the history of the king giving his daughter to one of the other kings. It just didn't work out, and I think they ended up killing her. It was a really sad tale. And then in verse 7, it says, but out of the branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate. So basically, she did have a son, which shall come with an army and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north and shall deal against him and shall prevail. So they retaliate by, seeking revenge. And then it says, and in verse 8, and shall carry captives into Egypt, their gods, with their princes and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So at this point in history, it's very, very clear that this is the Egyptian kingdom coming up against the king of the north. So if you look back at verse 8, just to make it very clear, it says, and shall carry captives into Egypt. So we can be sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that this king of the north or the south is Egypt. And then if you keep going into the prophecy, the king of the north becomes clear that it starts out as the northern region of the Greek Empire, which turns into eventually is taken over by Rome. And the rest of the prophecy is very long. And as the prophecy goes further, this king of the south, being Egypt, kind of transitions into more of a spiritual Egypt. Basically, it's darkness. It's, a lack of the knowledge of God. And so the king of the south is always Egypt, but it can be portrayed physically or spiritually. That would be my answer. Jay or Wendy, any other thoughts on that?
Nope, that's totally my understanding too. So well done walking through that whole prophecy. Very challenging in some ways because it's such a detailed prophecy. But
yeah, there's so much I want to say, but I'm like, okay, no, stop yourself.
Do you have a deeper explanation on the website?
I think so. I think that we have so many answers there. We've had thousands and thousands of people come in with questions on the book of Daniel. So if you just look in our library, I know we have plenty on Daniel chapter 11. So I'm sure there's plenty more information on our website. So yeah, BibleAsk.org. Go ahead and if you don't have something and you want it answered on our website or on our show, we'd love to have you guys submit your questions there anytime.
That's great. And also just, again, if you're tuning in, joining us, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or whatever platform you're joining us from, feel free to drop it in the chat and say hello. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions for us, we'd love to hear those questions as well.